Well, back to our leading story now. Irate parents in Gauteng are voicing frustration with the online admission placement process in place. Now, many haven't even received placements for the 2020 academic year. For more, let's chat to spokesperson for Gauteng Education. That's Mr. Steve Mabona. Good afternoon, Steve. Always a pleasure having you on the SABC News Desk.
Good afternoon.
Steve, the department, let's just take it a step back before we get into today's debacle, if you want to call it that. The department aimed to complete its application process by the end of last month. This hasn't happened. Tell us what contributed to the delays thus far.
Well, we can confirm that our intention was to end the process on the 31st of October.
October, yes.
And we could not manage to do that. Many reasons. One, we had so many parents that did not accept their placement. I mean, by the 29th, just before we reached the 30th, we had over 150,000 parents that did not accept. And at that time, we had actually placed just about 200 of parents that they needed to accept. So that, in a way, played a significant role in clogging the system, because remember, there are parents that would have received 2 or 3 offers.
Yes.
So if you accept one offer, you release the other 2. So where we need to place our other parents that have applied at the same school, we could not do it because of the number of parents that did not release some of the placement. But then, moving forward, we managed to then continue with the process, and at least while other parents, they've then started, accepting after we've made a call for them to accept. We have now about 4,500 that have not accepted.
What are some of the main reasons, Steve, do you think that parents are so hesitant even now to make a definite decision about where their child goes to school?
It's capacity. It's capacity. We have what we call high pressure schools.
Yes.
Schools that were full on the first day, within an hour, within 30 minutes. I mean, a school that has a capacity of 300 or 250, they would have received 1,500 applications or even 1,002. You can understand the frustration from other parents that would have said, this is my first choice. Yes. Because parents will say, out of the 5 schools that I've applied to, this is my first choice, or second, or third. In some instances, parents will then apply to high-pressure schools only. And it's highly likely that they might not even receive that. Because what is happening here, we have new admission regulations that are in place for 2020, which we have workshopped, which we have consulted. We went to length and breadth of the province consulting those regulations. They are saying you need to consider a parent that is close to the school. Close to the school can be anything. It can be 1 kilometer, it can be 500 meters, it can be 2.5 kilometers, because you look at the capacity. There are some schools that were full by 1.5 kilometer, parents that are within 1.5, because one parent will say, but I'm within 5 kilometer radius, or I'm still, I can see the school, from where I'm standing. But if parents that are closer to the school, they have filled up the school, then it becomes a challenge for us to place you there. The second category will be that of siblings. Siblings must be considered. Thirdly is those that work closer to the school. And we will have the within 30 kilometer radius, and beyond 30 kilometer radius. And we also need to look at the time and date when the application was put in the system. Because our system is a queue system in a way. Because you can't disadvantage someone who applied on the first day and say they have same, chances as someone who applied probably on the verge of us closing the system. So that's what we have now.
Steve, we've had clips of parents saying that they did make the deadline when the system opened between the 20th and the 27th of May this year. They made the deadline, they put in the applications as early as May, and then got an SMS, and now still no placement. I just want you to clarify the process for us from the point of application and take us through, so parents out there know what to expect and what to do actually when it comes to applying for school placement.
After closing our system, we then had to do what we call verification process, meaning that schools had to sit down and check on the criteria that I've mentioned.
Yes.
Also check on all those parents that must be, or children that must be placed in the school. And moving forward, then they had to send those lists to the district offices. Districts had to verify to say, indeed, they conform to the regulations, because remember, we don't want to be taken to court. We don't want some SGBs to, take us to court, and we had to make sure that we verify. You will know where we come from with Offerval and them. So we had to make sure that the verification process is done. After that process, then you send those lists back to the school. The school will be seeing their final list, and if they are happy, then they will give a go-ahead for us to place. So that's how the system works. And that process, you can't short-circuit it. You need to make sure that you verify so that there's no parent that is going to complain. Because remember, parents have a right to complain. They must lodge an objection if they feel that they were supposed to be placed there. And after an objection probably has been satisfied and they could not be placed, they can still appeal.
Yes.
And they appeal to the MEC, and then MEC will then make sure that
let's talk about what's happening at the offices today, all right? The parents are showing up saying that they received SMSs. Now, the MEC has apologized for that, saying the SMSs were sent in error. Who's going to take accountability for that, Steve? Because it's resulted in so much of stresses and frustration for parents who are justifiably desperate, anxious, and angry at this point.
Indeed. Let me just announce as well that we have actually extended the placement period to the 30th of November. So all parents, they must know that children will be placed. They don't need to be probably anxious so much, because the people were looking at the deadline to say, yes, you said you're going to issue up until the 31st.
Yes.
So the plan was to conduct this process that was conducted this weekend the following week. So hence MEC said this was erroneously sent, because the plan was saying after we are done with the process, probably after a week, we would have looked at the system and check on how far are we in terms of the placement. Because when on Friday we were sitting at around 50,000. Now when I look at the stats, we were sitting at about 40,000 odd. So it was to say, if we still have a challenge, because parents are anxious, then redirect them to district offices and the decentralized offices. So probably we should be in a position to can announce on the decentralized offices where parents can go and check. But then, well, that's why MEC has apologized. We take responsibility. We do apologize for the inconvenience. Probably officials felt that they need to take that decision to assist the process, but we felt that it was probably premature. It was supposed to be done, the following week. So hence the MEC has actually, apologized for the inconvenience.
All right. I wish we could play the clip for you, but we had parents this morning chanting that online must fall because they find the process too lengthy, too codified, too technical. Accessibility is still a problem, Steve.
We can say,
how do you respond to that? To a parent community, many of our people out there are not as technologically savvy as we would want them to be.
No, I will differ with the sentiment, because if online was not working, on the first day, we received over 220,000 applications. By the time we closed the system, we were actually full already. We had everyone that is applied who was supposed to be in the system. So if it was an inconvenience, if we didn't have means, if parents didn't understand it, it would have fallen at that time. But now, because it's placement period, yes, I mean, if I'm not placed in a school that I want, I will chant and say it must fall. But, I mean, we've placed over 200. We are now standing at about 230 parents that have been placed. They are not chanting that it must fall. It's about 40,000 that we have not placed, one. And secondly, today at the offices, it was not only parents that were not placed. It was parents that were not placed. Secondly, it was parents that were placed but in schools that they don't want. That's when the chanting will then come. To say, one will say, I applied at this school, You can't tell me that my first and second choice I can't get, but you want to give me an alternative school. Because remember, on Friday, what we did, we invoked the process of transfers, meaning that all those parents that could not get a space in the schools that they've applied to, they then have to be transferred systematically, meaning that we then need to give them new offers, which will be saying, because we have a responsibility as the department to place the children. We said the children are placed at this school, but because the parent does not want that school, then the parent will chant and say the system must fall. The system works very well. It brought good things to us as a department to plan, to make sure that parents know, and we also know how many learners we're expecting. That's why we are saying all children will be placed. It might not be at a school that the parent wants.
And can you wrap this all up by the end of November, which is in less than a month's time, as per the new deadline?
Definitely. I mean, if we could manage 40,000 parents that will normally come in January within a month, so now we should be in a position to can finish that number. We just want to appeal to those parents that have offers that are sitting in the system, because we can see about 4,700 placement offers are sitting there. Parents don't want to accept. Probably they are hoping that they will receive, other SMSs that will be placing them somewhere else. And we're not going to give them those offers because we don't have. Don't have capacity in other schools, and we can't be then issuing them with more placements. What we are calling upon them is to accept the offers that we have already provided to them.
Mr. Steve Mabona, Gauteng Education Spokesperson, thank you so much for your time on the SABC News Desk.
Thank you very much.